Have you ever wondered why some women seem to glide through life's storms, emerging not only unscathed but profoundly stronger, radiating an almost mystical magnetism, while others, equally intelligent and capable, find themselves perpetually ensnared in cycles of heartbreak, self-doubt, and unfulfilled potential? The answer, as Carl Jung so brilliantly illuminated, lies not in external circumstances, but in the alchemical process of inner transformation, the daunting, yet ultimately liberating, journey of turning the lead of pain into the gold of growth. It is a quest for individuation, a psychological odyssey that beckons every soul to confront its hidden depths, to integrate its fragmented parts, and to claim the sovereign power of its authentic self. Consider the archetype of the wounded healer, a figure as ancient as humanity itself. She is the one who has traversed the desolate landscapes of betrayal, abandonment, or profound disappointment. Her spirit bears the scars of battles fought in the shadows of attachment and expectation. Yet, it is precisely within these wounds, these fissures in the soul, that the light of profound understanding can enter. This is not a passive suffering, but an active engagement with the very forces that threaten to dismantle one's sense of self. It demands a fierce courage to descend into the shadow, that vast reservoir of unacknowledged desires, repressed emotions, and disowned aspects of personality that often dictate our unconscious reactions and attract precisely the kind of relationships that mirror our unhealed wounds. The modern woman, in her pursuit of external validation, often finds herself trapped in a labyrinth of ego projections. She casts her unfulfilled needs, her idealized images of love and partnership, onto others, particularly onto men. This is the tragic dance of the anima and animus, played out on the stage of romantic entanglement. The anima, the feminine principle within the male unconscious, often manifests as the projection of an idealized lover, the embodiment of a man's repressed emotional depth or longing for connection. Conversely, the animus, the masculine principle within the female unconscious, can project onto men the archetype of strength, protection, or intellectual prowess, often obscuring the genuine nature of the individual before her. When these projections inevitably shatter, as they must, the resulting pain is not merely the loss of another, but the devastating collapse of a fragile internal construct. It is the realization that the source of her perceived wholeness was always external, always contingent, always fleeting. This moment of collapse, however agonizing, is the crucible of transformation. It is here that the wisdom of Stoicism offers a radical path to liberation. Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, these ancient philosophers, with their profound understanding of human suffering, understood that true power lies not in controlling external events, but in mastering one's inner world. The relentless pursuit of what is outside our control, the clinging to outcomes, the desperate need for another's affirmation, these are the chains that bind. The Stoic woman understands that pain is an inevitable part of the human condition, but suffering is a choice. She learns to differentiate between what she can influence and what she cannot, redirecting her formidable energy from futile external battles to the arduous, yet ultimately rewarding, work of internal fortification. She begins to dissect the mechanics of her own attachments, examining the subtle ways in which her sense of self-worth has been tethered to the opinions and actions of others. This is the painstaking work of deconstructing ingrained patterns of codependency, of recognizing the subtle compromises made in the pursuit of love that ultimately diminish the self. It requires a ruthless honesty, an unwavering gaze into the mirror of one's own vulnerabilities and insecurities. For true empowerment is not the absence of fear or pain, but the capacity to meet these formidable adversaries with an unshakable inner resolve, understanding that they are not roadblocks, but rather the very catalysts for profound, soul-deep growth. This is the beginning of the great return, the journey home to the self that has always been whole, always been worthy, long before the world or any man ever dared to tell her otherwise. Type continue to receive the next part. Continue. This arduous path of internal reckoning leads inevitably to the confrontation with one's own shadow material. For the woman seeking true individuation, this is not a theoretical exercise but a visceral encounter. It involves acknowledging the aspects of her personality she has disowned, suppressed, or deemed unacceptable, perhaps her anger, her ambition, her sensuality, or even her profound need for solitude. These are the parts that, when unintegrated, manifest as self-sabotage, destructive relationship patterns, or a chronic feeling of unease. They are the unconscious drivers that often compel her to seek validation from external sources, particularly from men who embody the very qualities she denies within herself. When she projects her own unacknowledged power onto a partner, she simultaneously diminishes her own and grants him undue authority over her emotional landscape. The journey into the shadow demands a ruthless self-honesty, a willingness to gaze upon the less palatable aspects of her being without judgment. This is where the profound insights of Carl Jung resonate most deeply. He understood that what we despise in others is often a projection of what we fear or reject within ourselves. The man who triggers her deepest insecurities might simply be holding a mirror to her own unaddressed fears of inadequacy. The partner who consistently disappoints her may be reflecting her own hidden patterns of self-abandonment or a reluctance to set firm boundaries. This isn't about blaming the self, but about recognizing the intricate dance between inner and outer worlds, understanding that her external reality is often a symbolic representation of her internal state. Consider the archetype of the divine feminine in its raw, untamed form. She is not merely gentle or nurturing. She is also fierce, discerning, and unapologetically powerful. When a woman begins to reclaim her shadow, she integrates this primal energy. She stops apologizing for her strength, her intelligence, her desires. She learns to say no without guilt, to prioritize her well-being without apology, and to discern genuinely aligned connections from those that seek to drain her vitality. This integration is a profound act of self-love, a radical acceptance of her wholeness, flaws, and all. It allows her to move beyond the societal constructs of what a good woman should be and embrace the totality of who she is, a being of immense complexity and inherent worth. The unintegrated shadow, however, can manifest as ego inflation, a compensatory mechanism where the woman over-identifies with a superficial image of strength or self-sufficiency, often at the expense of genuine emotional connection. She might build walls, fearing vulnerability, or adopt a hyper-independent stance that, while appearing powerful, actually masks a deep-seated fear of rejection. This is not true empowerment. It is a defensive posture, a fortress built against perceived threats. True power, in the Jungian sense, emerges from integration, from the courageous act of uniting the light and dark within, not from suppressing one in favor of the other. This internal alchemy also profoundly impacts her relationships. When she no longer projects her unhealed wounds or idealized fantasies onto men, she begins to see them for who they truly are, not as saviors or antagonists, but as complex individuals on their own journey. She seeks partnership not from a place of deficit or desperate need, but from a position of overflowing abundance. Her attraction dynamics shift. Instead of unconsciously gravitating towards partners who perpetuate her unhealed patterns, she begins to magnetize individuals who resonate with her newfound wholeness, individuals who respect her boundaries and celebrate her authenticity. This is the profound shift from chasing validation to embodying it, from seeking completeness in another to radiating it from within. It is a subtle but seismic recalibration of her energetic blueprint, drawing forth relationships that nourish and elevate, rather than deplete and diminish. Type continue to receive the next part. Continue. The path to emotional sovereignty is often paved with the ashes of illusion, particularly the illusion that external circumstances or another person holds the key to one's happiness. This realization is the cornerstone of detachment, not as apathy, but as a profound liberation from the tyranny of outcomes. Drawing from the deep well of Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, the empowered woman learns to distinguish between what is truly hers to control her thoughts, her reactions, her virtues, and what lies firmly outside her sphere of influence, another's feelings, their choices, the unpredictable turns of fate. This distinction is not merely intellectual. It is a profound shift in her energetic orientation, freeing her from the exhausting cycle of striving and clinging. Imagine the archetypal queen, not one born of royal lineage, but one who has ascended to her inner throne through relentless self-mastery. She understands that her worth is not granted by external validation, but inherent and immutable truth. She does not chase approval. She cultivates her inner garden, knowing that its beauty will naturally attract what is aligned with her highest good. When a relationship falters or a dream dissolves, she experiences the natural pang of disappointment, but she does not shatter. Her foundation is not built on shifting sands of external gratification, but on the bedrock of her own intrinsic value. This resilience is a direct result of having faced her own vulnerabilities, embraced her shadow, and integrated her fragmented self into a coherent, powerful whole. This process of individuation is a continuous unfolding, not a destination. It is the brave act of becoming more fully who one is meant to be, independent of societal pressures, familial expectations, or romantic ideals. It means confronting the societal conditioning that often tells women they must be pleasing, accommodating, or submissive to be loved. It demands a radical redefinition of what it means to be feminine, recognizing that true femininity encompasses both fierce strength and tender vulnerability, sharp intellect and intuitive wisdom. The woman on this journey sheds the false masks she once wore for acceptance, revealing the authentic face of her soul. The profound impact of early life trauma, often residing deep within the unconscious, can create profound internal obstacles to this transformation. Unresolved wounds from childhood, particularly those related to abandonment, rejection, or neglect, can manifest as deep-seated feelings of unworthiness, a chronic need for external affirmation, or a pervasive fear of intimacy. These unhealed imprints often dictate the subconscious choices she makes in relationships, drawing her into patterns that mirror the original pain, unconsciously seeking to replay and resolve them, often with agonizing results. Here, the work of shadow integration becomes paramount. It is about bringing these buried fears and unmet needs into the light of conscious awareness, not to condemn them, but to acknowledge, process, and ultimately release their grip. By understanding the psychological dynamics at play, the projections, the shadow material, the ancestral patterns, she gains an unprecedented level of agency. She moves from being a passive recipient of circumstances to an active co-creator of her reality. She recognizes that the external world is a powerful mirror reflecting her internal landscape. If she experiences consistent disrespect, it compels her to examine where she might be disrespecting herself. If she feels perpetually undervalued, it prompts a rigorous inquiry into her own self-worth. This is not about blame, but about radical personal responsibility, not for the actions of others, but for her own responses, her own boundaries, and her own inner state. It is the ultimate act of reclaiming power, turning every challenge into an opportunity for deeper self-knowledge and profound growth. Type continue to receive the next part. Continue. The integration of the masculine and feminine principles within is a crucial phase of this alchemical process. Carl Jung posited that every woman carries an inner animus, the unconscious masculine aspect of her psyche, just as every man carries an inner anima. For the woman, the healthy development of her animus is not about becoming masculine in a superficial sense, but about cultivating inner qualities traditionally associated with the positive masculine: discernment, courage, logical thought, assertive action, and the capacity for structured purpose. When the animus is unintegrated or negative, it can manifest as rigid dogmatism, argumentative tendencies, or a harsh inner critic that constantly undermines her self-worth. Conversely, a healthy animus provides inner strength, the ability to protect her boundaries, and the capacity to pursue her goals with focused determination. This internal balance is essential for authentic power. A woman who has integrated her animus can stand firm in her convictions without resorting to aggression, and she can navigate the complexities of the world with clear-sightedness and strategic thinking. She no longer seeks these qualities exclusively in external partners, but recognizes them as inherent capacities within her own being. This profound internal shift transforms her relationship dynamics. She is drawn to partners who complement, rather than complete, her. She seeks a true partnership of equals, where both individuals are whole within themselves, bringing their integrated selves to the union. The cultivation of this inner fortitude is also deeply intertwined with the principles of self-worth psychology. For too long, many women have been conditioned to derive their sense of value from external sources, their physical appearance, their relationship status, their professional achievements, or the approval of others. This external locus of validation creates a perpetual state of vulnerability, as her self-esteem becomes contingent upon forces outside her control. True self-worth, however, is an intrinsic, unwavering belief in one's own inherent value, irrespective of external circumstances. It is a quiet, profound knowing that she is enough, simply because she exists. This shift from external validation to internal worth is revolutionary. It frees her from the desperate need to people-please, to compromise her integrity for acceptance, or to tolerate disrespectful behavior. When she truly knows her worth, she sets boundaries not out of anger or resentment, but out of a calm, clear understanding of what she deserves. She understands that her energy is a precious resource, to be guarded and invested wisely. She prioritizes her well-being, her growth, and her peace, recognizing that these are not luxuries but fundamental necessities for a flourishing life. The journey often requires a deep dive into the concept of trauma integration. Many women carry the subtle, often unacknowledged, imprints of past emotional wounds that continue to influence their present-day choices and reactions. These can range from overt traumatic experiences to more subtle forms of emotional neglect or invalidation. The body keeps the score, and these unhealed wounds can manifest as anxiety, depression, chronic self-doubt, or a pervasive sense of not being good enough. The alchemical process of transformation demands that she gently, yet courageously, revisit these old wounds, not to re-traumatize herself, but to acknowledge their existence, process the emotions associated with them, and release their constricting grip. This can involve therapeutic work, somatic practices, or profound self-reflection, all aimed at liberating the energy that has been bound by past pain. Only when these knots of unhealed trauma begin to unravel can she fully step into her embodied power and experience true emotional freedom. Type continue to receive the next part. Continue. The ultimate fruition of this alchemical journey is the experience of emotional freedom and a profound, unshakable inner peace. This is not the absence of feeling, but the capacity to witness her emotions without being consumed by them. She understands that emotions are transient visitors, messengers bearing information, not permanent residents dictating her reality. The empowered woman observes her anger, her sadness, her fear, with a calm detachment, allowing them to move through her without taking root. This mastery over her internal landscape is the true measure of her growth, a direct result of the painstaking work of self-awareness and integration. She arrives at a state of detachment from external validation, a cornerstone of true liberation. The need for applause, for approval, for reassurance from others dissolves. Her sense of worth is an internal wellspring, constantly replenishing itself. This radical self-sufficiency does not equate to isolation. Rather, it allows her to engage in relationships from a place of genuine desire and authentic connection, rather than desperate need. She can offer her love freely, without the unspoken demand for reciprocation, because her own cup is already overflowing. This magnetic inner abundance naturally draws to her individuals who resonate with her wholeness, creating partnerships built on mutual respect and genuine admiration, rather than codependent patterns. This profound internal shift marks a rebirth of the self. The woman who undertakes this journey emerges from the crucible of pain not merely healed, but transformed, an entirely new being. She sheds the old narratives of victimhood, the limiting beliefs inherited from past experiences or societal conditioning. She steps into her power with a quiet confidence, no longer defined by what has happened to her, but by who she has become through her courageous engagement with her own psyche. Her past pain is not erased, but transmuted. It becomes wisdom, empathy, and a profound source of inner resilience. It informs her compassion for others and her unwavering commitment to her own well-being. The concept of inner peace for this woman is not a passive state, but an active, cultivated one. It is the peace that comes from having confronted her deepest fears, embraced her shadow, and integrated all the fragmented pieces of her being. It is the tranquility that arises from knowing her true self, a self untethered from external fluctuations, a self that is intrinsically complete. She finds solace not in escaping reality, but in engaging with it fully, armed with the tools of self-awareness and the unwavering strength of her integrated psyche. This peace radiates outwards, influencing her interactions, her decisions, and her entire way of being in the world. She becomes the living embodiment of the alchemical transformation, a testament to the fact that true growth emerges from the willingness to face discomfort, to delve into the depths of one's own unconscious, and to consciously choose the path of self-mastery. Her journey is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to transcend adversity, to find meaning in suffering, and to emerge from the darkness with a profound and radiant light. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses. The end.